So I know that this would be quite a long ways off, but by chance, live action One Piece happens to make it all the way to Wano when the current actors are like in their 40s. Do you think that they will try to what kind of child actress do you think that they would be trying to go after to play Tama? Because Tama is such a key character in Wano. I mean, so, it's like as children in that time frame, so would like Momonosuke's actor, so would like even Toko's actor, who will be the next one I'm talking about in these videos, followed by Momonosuke and then Hiyori. But like a child actor that would be able to play Tama, that would be a very interesting thing. By a technicality, said child actor probably isn't even born yet if One Piece happens to get all the way to Wano. Which would be quite impressive if it did. But right now we're just looking at the goalposts of getting through seasons 2 and 3 with, the beginning of the Grand Line into Alabasta. So that's kind of where we're starting. That's kind of where the goalposts are right now. That's kind of like, Little League football team looking like, let's win the Super Bowl. Okay. It's like, yeah, that's going to be a ways down the line. But back to Tama. So last left off was essentially when, Momonosuke and the Scabbards were heading off toward, Onigashima, along with, Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats and their other allies were all going to be heading off to get to their ships or the other various vessels getting ready to head out. And we know that at that same time frame, Tama has already essentially concocted this plan for her to follow them. For her and Speed and the others that are some of her, it's not Daifuku, but the spider scorpion smile user from the prison. And, and some of her other ones that are, that are her, tamed creatures, her tame smiles at that point in time. And, they're going to head off to go fight as well. And she essentially just, leaves a note behind for Sukeyaki to find, for Tenguyama to find. Daifugu, that was his name, yeah. It's Speed, Daifugu, Gazelleman, Komochio, and then Hihimaru, who's the giant baboon. So it was they're kind of the force that go off. They essentially commandeer a ship. I kind of wonder if maybe that same ship had Hiyori on it, but that's never 100%. We don't know exactly how Hiyori got to the island in the first place. But that's just headcanon. That's either she's on this ship or she was snuck aboard one of Denjiro's ships, which I'll probably go over a little bit more when I get to that section for Hiyori. But so, as they're on their way to Onigashima, they're following a little bit behind, all of the Straw Hat group that are heading that way and all of the allied forces that are on their way to go to fight Kaido. They're following a little bit behind. And during that time frame, Tama's just sitting there, just, plucking off the dongos, so she has them all ready. And, she's making, this little pile of them, and she's kind of exhausting herself, and Speed's please, young mistress, please stop, please, that's enough of them. And she's okay, fine. And she, kind of gets exhausted. So their plan is that, Speed and the others are going to go and make their way, kind of infiltrate the island and start giving out the dongos to the Smiles who are not, to the Smile Beast Pirates, the gifters that are not already under Tama's, that haven't been tamed by Tama yet. So that's their intention. And that is essentially what happens. Speed infiltrates the island, so does Daifugo and Gazelleman and stuff. And Tama is essentially riding around on Komochio and has Hihimaru with her as well, to kind of help keep her safe. They're all running around and, they're handing out the different dongos to the different beast pirates and stuff like that. From there, we have it that the big reveal that Tama is, oh my god, Tama's here, is from Nami and Usopp. Because Nami and Usopp at that point in time are currently in a battle with Ulti and Page 1. And Tama essentially comes out of nowhere with Komichio, and Komichio just bites onto Ulti, which is just funny. And, like, bites onto Ulti, thrashes her around a bit, and then, like, chucks her to the side. And, like, Nami and Usopp are like, oh my god, Tama, where did you come from? And then they, like, climb onto Komichio, and then, like, they're running around, and Tama explains, well, I mean, I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. I want to help. I wanted to help with this raid. I was, I heard so much about it, and I wanted to help, and, I mean, like, I can... I don't know if she fully explains that she's been handing out that they've been handing out the dongos, but, like, that's kind of implied that she explains it to Nami and Usopp. And we know that during this time frame, because, like, Ulti and Page 1 end up, like, chasing them around, Usopp has, like, fired a couple of the dongos at Ulti and Page 1, and assumedly, like, at least, like, one of them ended up in, like, Page 1's mouth, but it didn't do anything. Because, like, they probably did that. Oh, he ate it. Tama, try giving him an order. I order you to stop chasing us. Page 1 doesn't listen to those. Like, okay, well, it doesn't apply to them. That works. That's good information. So they have that. They're running around. Hihimaru at one point stayed behind to try to fight them, and he kind of gets knocked down. He ends up being fine. I think we do see him later. But, like, they're running around riding on Komichio, and during that time frame, one of the things that happens is that Nami reveals to Tama that Ace is actually Luffy's brother. And Tama then has, like, the moment where she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I yelled at Luffy for Big Bro Luffy for telling me that Ace was dead and that he didn't know what he was talking about. Oh my god. And, like, so we're kind of getting that thing where, like, she's now finding out about this connection between them beyond the fact that, like, Luffy knew Ace. That's kind of just one of the things that's implied, that, like, Tama, it's like, okay, Tama, probably from her perspective, back when she first meets Luffy and finds out, that he knew Ace, he doesn't say that Ace was his brother, because that's a bit of a painful topic for Luffy to want to bring up at that point in time, which is fair. Very fair. But now this is where Tama's finding out about that, and she's like, oh no, I can't believe I said those things to Big Bro, because she just got very angry at him, and I talked about that already. So, what ends up happening here is, they're running around, and then eventually they end up getting caught, or they come across some of the gifters that have been given the dongos, and Tama's yelling at them, and they start obeying her. From there, they're still being pursued by Ulti and Page 1, and they end up running through the area where Frankie and Sasaki are, and they actually pull a trick that I like that they do this. They have it that Usopp and Nami are pretending that, like, oh no, we're being chased by the gifters as they're running toward the group to, like, lull Sasaki essentially into a false sense of security. And then Tama yells out, attack! And then the gifters all attack Sasaki's group, which gives Frankie an advantage. So we have that going on there. I think we also figure out that a couple of the ones that were in Sasaki's group are now also under Tama's control. So we kind of get that one. So they're running around, and their intention is to try to make it to the live stage, because Tama's explained that, okay, so we've been handing out the dongos, and I need to get to the live stage so that way I can give an order, so that way they'll then help us. It's like, okay, so that's their plan, is to get to the live stage. Ulti and Page 1 show up, and they start fighting against Usopp and Nami again. And what ends up happening is Ulti actually kind of figures out that Tama has done something to the different gifters, but she can't figure out exactly how she did it, but she figures out that it's something that's like, you've done something to take control of our forces. What have you done? Undo it, essentially, or I'll kill you. Is essentially what Ulti is going after here. So we have that. But what ends up happening is, this is when they also run into Big Mom. And, angry Big Mom, who has, was up on the roof fighting alongside Kaido against the worst generation, this is after she's made Hera and everything, and now she's, roaming around part of the castle, essentially looking for like Kid or Law or someone else to fight, and she comes across the group, and she goes into mother mode because like Tama shouts out, "Oh, Lin or Olin, over here, over here! We need your help!" And she switches into her mother mode, and she's just like happily talking with Tama. It's just like, "Oh, hello, Tama. How are you? What happened? How's Otsuru? How's the village?" And then Tama reveals that, "Oh no, the village got hurt. The village got attacked by Kaido's pirates and everything." And so we're kind of getting that explanation there. And this makes Big Mom very angry that they attacked Okobore Town. So, and she goes into that's against the pirate code type of a thing. So I want to point out something here, just a little bit on the Big Mom topic here, since I've already done all my Big Mom videos at the moment. Eventually I might do something else where I add in more of the information that we've learned about with like the Rocks pirates and stuff like that, or any other additional information that comes along about Big Mom. But from stuff that we have learned about the Rocks pirates that we're learning in the current flashback, Big Mom doesn't, like, she has her kids with her in the flashback. We saw that. We saw, Katakuri, Daifuku, and Oven in one of the more recent chapters, sitting with Big Mom. And she would have had like 20 kids at that point in time in the flashback, 44 years ago, 42 years ago range. So we also know that like the Rocks pirates have developed this huge reputation for like destroying towns and stuff like that. But we also see that Big Mom has a bit of like that pirate code of like, you don't just attack innocents type of a thing. You don't just attack people who like were nice and gave you food type of a thing. And she didn't like that. And that's one of the reasons why she lashes out at page 1 here. She like, hockeys, armament conqueror hockeys up her fist and like punches out page 1. Because, like Ulti and page 1 have shown up here, and she like takes her anger out at what Hold'em did to the village, to Okobore Town, out on page 1. She also kind of to a degree ends up taking it out on Ulti, but we'll get to that in a second. But, so I'm kind of like, okay, was there something here where Big Mom was like part of the code that they kind of followed, even as the Rocks pirates was like, yeah, they got blamed for destroying different villages and different things like that. And maybe they did, but we don't know, that's like propaganda in the newspaper. I'm not saying that they were like saints to the places, but like we saw that they had gone after like the religious foundation organization that had been like this, charity organization, but in actuality it's essentially a place for these guys to steal the money that's being donated to the poor for their own use. Essentially, and they're stealing it from them. So it's like, okay, the money's not actually going to the poor, so yeah, okay. So it's like maybe there's something there that went into that type of a code. We haven't fully gotten the full setup of like how the pirate code fully works, but apparently Kaido, with Hold'em's actions went enough against it in Big Mom's opinion that she's like, oh no, I'm gonna knock out the first dinosaur that I see, which happens to be page 1. And so we have that moment, but then we also have it that Tama is like, because Big Mom is trying to protect Tama, but she also sees Nami and Usopp there. And what ends up happening is she tries to take Tama away from Nami and Usopp because, of course, to Big Mom, Luffy or Nami and Usopp are part of Luffy's crew, therefore they are her enemies. Plus, like, Nami had been a whole cake, so that's part of that too. And she's like, oh no, Tama, you shouldn't be with these people. They're dangerous. And she tries to take, like, Tama, gently, essentially, tries to take Tama away from them. And Usopp and Nami are actually kind of trying to hide during this moment because, like, okay, let's see if we can use this to our advantage, which is fair. But what ends up happening is Ulti shows up and, like, headbutts Komachio from the side. Charges head first into Komachio. And, this makes Tama sad, and then Big Mom ends up striking out at her as well. telling her to be quiet, and it was like back slaps or whatever Ulti to tell her to be quiet, and then Ulti gets angry because Big Mom attacked page 1. So what ends up happening is Big Mom and Nami are both angered at this point in time, because Big Mom is angry that like Ulti tried to attack Tama, and then Nami is of course angry for the same reason. And there's like that. It's like one of those moments where it's just like when you're in like a giant, I don't know. I've never played Fortnite, but I know that there's a lot of like, just like a whole bunch of different like giant battles, and it's just like alliances are formed and alliances are broken, like the blink of an eye or the whatever type of a thing. And like at that exact moment, Nami and Big Mom, for Tama's sake, we're on the exact same page, and Ulti gets laser cannoned by Big Mom, and then somehow survives it. Good endurance on her, and then ends up getting electrocuted by Nami a little bit later on, by Nami and Zeus a little bit later on. But while Big Mom is dealing with the Toby Roppo, Nami and Usopp are like carrying Tama, who's been injured, carrying her toward where the live stage is. They do end up eventually making it to the live stage, but that's after like Big Mom has done something else, tried to take her away again. Ulti's like, no, Usopp and Nami are my friend. And she's like, no, these are dangerous pirates. You shouldn't be anywhere near them, Tama. Big Mom is trying to protect Tama. And I went over that when I talked about this bit during Big Mom's videos. Big Mom is essentially trying to protect Tama. As we have stated, when she goes into mother mode, she's very protective of like her kids and other small children that fall into the category in that regard. And she gets very protective of them. Once I guess they're out of the cute, adorable, pinch your little cheeks stage, she's less willing to protect them depending on the child. As opposed to Estrid, who threw Loki out of a tree like 10 minutes after he was born. So we kind of have those moments. Tama is like pleading with Big Mom that they're her friends, that Usopp and Nami are her friends. Big Mom just ignores her, gets ready to, attack them, but gets distracted by Zeus, and they're able to then run away. That's when Kid shows up, and Kid then takes over and is starting to fight against Big Mom, while Nami and Usopp manage to get Tama, and they are heading back to the live stage. They hear the announcement about Kaido defeating Luffy. This is when Luffy would have been knocked off the roof for the first time. They hear that announcement, and they're like, no, that can't be. And then it's just like Momonosuke jumps on and is just like, no, Luffy's still alive, keep fighting. So they keep fighting. They make it to the live stage. Usopp essentially like knocks out Bao Wang, grabs like the snail mic from Bao Wang, gives it to Tama, and Tama makes the announcement over the loudspeaker of like, all of you, all of the ones who are, under her control, that have been tamed by her, turn against the Beast Pirates and help the samurais and help the Straw Hats, help the Alliance type of a thing. And so that's what's going on there. There's also the moment where Ulti shows up, grabs Tama. Tama gets hit, and that's when she gets like the scars on her cheeks, gets slashed on her cheek by Ulti. And she's like, whatever you did to our subordinates, undo it now. And that's when Nami just like up and like thunder tempos Ulti on behalf of Tama. Just like, and you're down. Yee. So I love the fact that Ulti is taken out by two women who are just like, oh no, you fucked with the wrong little girl today. Pachycephalosaurus girl, you fucked with the wrong little girl. And they do that. They together, Big Mom and Nami kind of take Ulti down. Also just kind of shows you what a tank Ulti is compared to Page 1, who just taken out with like a punch from Big Mom. So that's kind of what happens there. Tama has given her order to the crowd, and that results in like all of the different gifters who have been affected the by the dongos, by the Kibi dongos, are now like they're switching sides, and that plays into the fact that there was already a lot of like the waiters and the pleasures who had been affected by Queen because of the mummy virus, or not the mummy virus, because of the Isoni virus, and that had been cured by Chopper, flipping sides as well. So we have like this big, that turn in the battle that is, okay, we got a bunch of the gifters are now switching sides. We got some of these other ones that are all switching sides, from Kaido to fighting alongside, our heroes and stuff, our alliance group, as that shift is happening. And like Queen is just befuddled by this. He then tries to attack Tama after she's fainted. So they're taking care of all of that. Queen tries to attack them. They keep Tama safe, and they manage to get away. And like they're all realizing what Tama did, and of course we kind of see this reflected when in the lounge waiting room area where like the CP0 agents are, where it's just like, oh, there's been a turn in the battle, and they're flipping the go pieces around to represent how things have shifted in the battle. So we're kind of seeing that there. Queen tried to fire a cannon at her. Sanji attacked him. Blah, 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 blah. Usopp and Nami fled with Tama. And essentially for the rest of the time frame, Tama is essentially just with Nami for the rest of the time frame during the rest of this part of the arc. So we kind of cut around. During this time frame, a bunch of the gifters who are now on Tama's side are, of course, helping the Straw Hats and helping the Alliance members and stuff like that, helping the samurai. Even the ones who were like former jailers are now helping the samurai and stuff like that had been in the jail, that had been at Udon prison. So we're getting that flip there. And like they found Komichio and he's okay. They are bandaging him up and everything like that. And Tama's just so happy that Komichio's fine. Eventually they find Kinemon's lower body, and then Usopp goes off with Hamlet to go and find the rest of him along with Kiku, and Nami and Tama end up eventually making their way they also find Hikimaru at one point in time, and they end up making their way to like part of the bath area where Marco is, and Marco kind of checks them over and says that they'll be okay. And then that's when we get the moment where because like this is also like we're kind of cutting back and forth, and we don't see Tama and Nami for a little while, then we come back to them. But what ends up happening is, of course, now it lines up for when Kaido defeated Luffy on the roof for the second time. And after, the involvement of Guernica from CP0, interfering with the battle there, and Kaido knocking Luffy out and essentially killing him during that time frame. And what ends up happening is Kaido, bursts into the live stage area in his dragon form and is shouting that, Straw Hat is dead, blah, 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 you're all defeated. Your last hope is gone, type of a thing. It's, now to Luffy's death. And Tama is crying this time. Nami accuses Kaido of lying. And Kaido, tries to attack them. Marco protects Nami and Tama during this time frame. And then that's when Luffy does wake up on the roof, reaches in, grabs Kaido, and pulls him out. And then starts, toon battling him up on the roof. It's like, Kaido, Luffy has just played Toon World, and you are in for a world of hurt. And so we have that all going on there. And Nami and Tama are, like, getting glimpses as this is happening, where, like, Kaido gets burst through, where Luffy's head pops through, and then everybody's eyes, like, pop out of their head, and, like, different things like that. Where they're, like, watching this kind of bits of this battle happen, or hear bits of this battle happening on the roof as Luffy is fighting against Kaido during that time frame. And eventually the battle finishes. Onigashima, everything's on fire, and then it gets put out, and then like Onigashima is landed by you know, by Momonosuke and, Yamato and everything, and Luffy defeats Kaido and all of that stuff is happening. And then like Nekomamushi does like the big announcement about like, Kaido has been defeated and Orochi is dead, and Onigashima has been safely landed on the ground, and no one's, it didn't squish anybody, type of a thing. Our victory. And like, so Tom is like celebrating with the rest of them. Then we get to a little bit after that, like kind of during like the battle is over, but like the rest of the characters haven't, I think they have, like the scabbards and stuff have headed into the capital at that point in time. But we have it that Usopp actually ends up asking Tama, so how long do your powers last exactly? And she's like, oh, well, so they last for about a month. So generally it's, I can, tame one of the beasts with the dongos, and then it lasts for about a month. And then after the month is up, they can decide whether they want to stay, or they can decide whether they want to go off and be wild again, essentially. And I mean, I do love the fact that like from what we see, that Komachio has been with Tama probably even before she got her power. So that's like, he's just her loyal pet. He's her loyal friend. Hihimaru might end up staying. We don't know fully, but then that's a way of explaining the way of, Tama explaining about like, oh no, the beast pirates, all the ones who I tamed, they will be freed soon once, the month is up. They'll be free again, and they can decide what they want to do from there. So she then looks at Speed, and Speed is like, oh no, I want to stay with you and everything like that because you're my master. And she's like, oh, Speed, you're very much like a mother to me, which just makes Speed so touched. And we have that moment, which is just funny. So we have those moments there. And then we have it that, like, they do watch as, like, Momonosuke and the Scabbards, arrive in the capital, in the flower capital, and where they do, like, he does, like, the big, they have, like, the big speech moment and everything else like that. And, like, Momonosuke is now the Shogun of Wano and everything else like that. And Tama kind of thinks back about this, and she's like thinking about her parents and everything else that happened there, and how she met, Hitetsu and all this other stuff. And then she just like jumps into Nami's arms because she's crying, and Nami is like, comforting her and all that type of thing. Then we get to where it is time where we cut about a week. Usopp, or a bunch of the characters are getting rested up, mostly Luffy and Zoro are having to rest up from their very major and very, very impactful battles, life-threatening. They rest up, and during that time frame, the rest of the group have all been like staying at the castle and everything else, staying at the palace and the flower capital, the flower castle. They've been all staying there, and Luffy wakes up, and Luffy and Zoro wake up, and everybody's just so happy. And then they have like the festival, Fire Festival 2.0 or whatever, where they're all just celebrating, and it's even more of a celebration than it was the first time and everything like that we saw. Because now it's actually celebrating their freedom, as to one night a year where they kind of get to let loose. Now they're actually celebrating their freedom, and like we see Tama there with Nami and Usopp and Chopper, and like just having a lot of fun and everything else like that. Like she's just enjoying herself, and getting to eat like her candied apples and different things like that. So we're seeing that. After the festival, we have it that it is revealed that Shinobu has now taken Tama as her apprentice, and that she will train her to become an even better kunoichi. So we kind of have that, like we have, the adorable scene where Tama shows up in like her new little, ninja robes, and Nami is just like, oh, you're so cute, and just like fawning over her. There's also the bath scene before the festival that they have, so there's that. I'll throw that in there as well. It is whatever. And, so we have all of that. And then there is a little anime only scene that I do want to touch on because I do like what it shows. There is an anime only scene where Luffy and the others are getting ready to leave, so they're kind of doing some of their final goodbyes. And part of the segment is Luffy and Tama go back to the tea house go back to Osuru's tea house in Okabore town. And they're having Oshiruko again, and they're just like talking and laughing and saying goodbye to each other. And Tama is thanking Luffy for everything that he did, for saving Wano and everything else like that. She is sad that he has to leave, but he cheers her up, and she's like reminding him of her intention to become this kunoichi and become brave and strong and everything like that, so she can leave Wano one day and go travel the world again. And go travel the world like she wanted to do with Ace and everything else like that. So that might be something that's in the future. We'll see. So we have that. And of course, so we have they're all saying goodbye to the different Wano characters. And then we have the two follow-up bits. So we have the Egghead Island arc. During the Egghead Island arc, we do have it that Tama does end up hearing part of Vegapunk's message, because she, along with Shinobu, Momonosuke, and Kinemon, are at the flower capital at that point in time, and they are in the castle where there is the Den Mushi that was one of the leftover ones from Orochi, to be able to communicate with Kaido and such when they were outside of Wano. That way, they are able to, they end up hearing the message, and they're like, oh, well, that's not good. So, yeah, no, that's not good. And then we get into the Yamato cover page story, the only child Yamato's Golden Harvest, surrogate pilgrimage, the shrine tour. And the way that starts is, of course, where Tama shows up is Yamato shows up at the Amagasa village during his travels around Wano, shows up at Amagasa village. And while he is there, he ends, Tama's there training, throwing the kunai knives and everything else like that under, Shinobu's watchful eye. And eventually what ends up happening is, Komachiyo and Speed are here as well, and they end up all taking a nap, and then Yasuie's sword is stolen. So then they all go chasing after the sword, where they end up coming across, they run past Udon Prison, but they don't end up going inside Udon Prison. They then end up running further, where they end up coming across the one who took the sword, and it ends up being Hold'em who took the sword. And Hold'em actually ends up capturing Tama, but unlike at the beginning of Wano, when a very similar thing happened, Tama is actually able to fight back now. She's gained a lot of confidence and skill, and she ends up just kicking Hold'em in the face and kind of knocking him down and taking him out, which is just yay, Tama. And, takes him down enough, then assumedly tie him up and then force him to take them to the base where all the kidnapped people are being taken. They find out, oh, this is who's base. He's okay, that's what's going on here. Tama is then there while they are, looking into the base. They see that, who's who has Ulti and Page 1 tied up. He also has several of, all the kidnapped women, along with Minatomo, all captured. They then break into the base. They free the women, and they free Ulti and Page 1 during this time frame. And then what ends up happening is, after that, Tama says goodbye to Yamato, Ulti, and Page 1 as they are all heading off to the Hakumai region to go see Kawamatsu after they're done. And Tama also has sent with them a straw hat to give to Kawamatsu once they get to the region. Which they do, so the end of story there. Kawamatsu gets a hat. But I do kind of wish that there had been something here where we had, because of how much Ulti had chased after Tama and everything, and had scratched Tama and attacked her and everything, during the Onigashima stuff. I kind of wish there had been something that we saw here with Ulti and Tama at least kind of maybe acknowledging each other to a degree. I don't know. Ulti was very thankful to Yamato for saving page 1, so that gratitude may have extended to Tama as well, for helping in that regard, so that's a possibility there. But it's also like, it would have been nice to at least have something there. And there may be something that happens later, because, like, this is as far as we are in the story at the moment. This is, at the moment, the last time that we saw Tama. She could pop up again in the cover story before it's finished. If we cut back to Wano again at some point in time, we might see Tama there. Depending on what happens, I would like it that we at some point get, like, a resolution as to what happened to a lot of the beast pirates, the gifters that she tamed with her dongos. I would like it if we got, like, some type of a revelation there. Revelation. Bit of, like, an explanation as to, like, okay, how many of them did stick around because of, like, what they saw happen with Kaido and everything else like that, or how many of them are like, no, we're not going to work for this little girl, and that boy is barely a prince, type of a thing, all of that stuff. And, like, then they'd probably end up getting captured and locked up in, Udon, for their crimes. But if they're willing to work, kind of like what we see happening with Ulti in page 1, if they're willing to work with the new regime, with with Momonosuke's regime, and try to, I guess, somewhat amend for their crimes, lots of community service. Lots of community service. You're going to go clean all of the graffiti off of that wall over there that you guys decided to tag, type of a thing. And help and a bunch of that type of stuff. You destroyed this village, you're going to go now learn how to rebuild it. Okay, you polluted this river, we're going to clean up this river. Different things like that. I would like to see something like that where we get some type of, like, at least a bit of more information as to, like, some of them stayed, some of them didn't, some of them got locked up, some of them managed to try to escape, type of a thing. I'm pretty sure, given just how much Oda has built up Speed and Tama's relationship, I'm pretty sure Speed is going to stay at the very least alongside Tama even after the Dongo wears off. But besides that, I don't really know. Maybe Daifugo might stay, maybe Gazelle Man, maybe Hamlet, because they were some of the ones that we focused on. But other than that, I'm like, I don't know. Some of them might, some of them might not. We know that, there's Babanuki and some of the other ones that were at the prison that were also under Tama's control. And the thing is that if Babanuki goes out of Tama's control and he's no longer doing what he's supposed to do at the prison and he just starts letting the other prisoners escape, then that's not good. So they probably will end up having something where, they're like, okay, so we at least have to have some of this ready to address should something happen. So probably what ends up happening, just essentially headcanon level of this, depending on stuff, unless Oda actually ends up ever showing us what happened. Which is a possibility, or at the very least has someone explain what happened. It's like, oh, there's like this big final battle or whatever, and, Tama shows up and she's got, like, Speed with her, and they've got, Yamato has, like, Ulti in page 1, and, like, some of the other smiles and stuff, the gifter smiles and everything like that also are there. And they're like, come on, let's get fighting. And they're, fighting on the side of the Kazukis and the side of the Straw Hats and everything. And they're like, wait a second, aren't those former beast pirates? Yeah, well, they decided to stick with us for a while. Okay. Type of a thing. So that'll be kind of an interesting thing, but it's like, essentially what may end up happening is, like, they're like, okay, well, that month is about to expire for how long they're going to be under Tama's control. So we probably should keep an eye on them to make sure that they're not going to just go rogue and start causing problems, and still give them the choice of whether or not it's like, okay, your choices are either A, once, when you're free of Tama's control, You can either A, stay here in Wano, work with us to help rebuild Wano, fix what you guys helped broke, what you guys helped to break, type of a thing. B, we can lock you up in Udon and you can do prison labor there. It's not going to be the way that Kaido ran it or the way that Queen ran it. It's going to be much more humane, but you'll still be in prison. Or you will leave Wano. Or we will let you leave Wano. Type of thing, but you'll be on your own once you leave Wano. We're not going to help you or anything like that. Those would probably be like the 3 options they would give them. Smart Money is like, no, we'll just stay and we'll work. We'll work with you guys. We're sorry. We'll try to amend for our past deeds, type of a thing. That's possibly what'll happen with some of them. That's probably what's going to happen with like Speed and some of the others. Some of the others maybe not. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Puppy stretched. Okay. I think that's it for what I have for Tama. We don't really have too much other information at the moment. And I've already discussed her Kozuki, Kurozumi connections and everything else there. There is kind of the question that is posed of, will Tama ever tell the Scabbards and Momonosuke and Hiyori that she is a Kurozumi? There is that question there of like, would she ever tell them? Because, I mean, like, the way that it is explained at the end of Wano, when Hiyori has the whole, Kurozumi Orochi was born to burn, she is specifically referring to Orochi. Not to the Kurozumis as a whole, but to Orochi specifically. And again, this is something that I wish had gotten addressed in the story. It might be something that gets asked in an SBS question or something that gets explained later. If Momonosuke does anything where he's like, okay, we're going to send out a message where I'm going to essentially offer, not a blanket pardon, but like something to anyone else who happens to be of Kurozumi blood, that we are going to get rid of these stupid Kurozumi hunting rules and different things like that. We're going to get rid of that. That's not legal anymore. That's still wrong. That's still murder. We're not going to do that anymore. And then like Tama comes forward and says that she's a Kurozumi. It's like, I'm actually a Kurozumi. I'm not related to Orochi directly, but my parents were part of the clan. And they died just like everybody else who worked in the factories when I was a kid. And like, by that point in time, Momonosuke and Hiyori and the Scabbards would have developed enough of an emotional attachment to Tama that they're like, and they know that she's good. And it's like, that's blaming the children for the sins of the parent. And that's one of the things that Wano was trying to get away from, because that was the whole reason that Orochi was angry at the Kurozumi family and Wano, is because of the sins of what their ancestors did as opposed to what their current actions are. And, Oden kind of wanted to try to break that cycle, and Momonosuke hopefully will be trying to break that cycle as well, so we'll see what happens there. But that's what I have for this. I thank you very much. The next one of these ones is just going to be a video about Toko, because to a degree she does have this connection to like the various leaders in Wano, between Yasue and even Hiyori and Momonosuke, going into that regard with everything that happens there. And she's kind of an interesting thing of like how to look at some of the things that's going to happen in the future. And there's always the possibility she'll end up being like a leader in the future. Same thing with like Tama will probably end up growing up to become like the head of like the next Oniwabanshu. With like being trained by Shinobu and Raizo and stuff like that. And she can be trained. She can then, once she becomes an amazing kunoichi and, is, great with her, her own skills as a ninja and everything else like that, then hopefully she will be able to become one of the ones who is in charge of protecting Momonosuke and Hiyori and that type of stuff for, like, the royal family. But also if she then decides to, like, Luffy and the others show back up, same offer that was extended to Momonosuke and Yamato and Kinemon kind of was extended to Tama. And have Tama maybe go out and like be another captain of one of like the Straw Hat ships or something like that in the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. I've seen some great art that's like Tama grown up in that regard. So that's what we have there. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!